Good morning. Today we're going to change the brake pads on a 2010 Ford Escape XLT. These are the tools we're going to use today. I need a jack stand. I need a flathead screwdriver. I need a hex ratchet. This is a 7mm metric hex clamp, and these are the brake shoes from the other side that I already did. So if you want to take a screenshot of this before you get your shoes, because I went to Canadian Tire and they sold me the wrong ones. In their database they have different pads, so I actually had to run to Ford, and even they tried to sell me different ones, because they came up with these are the replacement ones here, and Ford had a smaller clip here, so this is really important, the size of this clip. What it does is it goes into the caliper, which I'll show you a little bit later, but it's super important that they look exactly like that. This is the box comes in, so here's your part number, BR1047-B, brake pads, and you get in a kit, you get 4 of them, so two per side. This is your fronts, rears are different. Comes with this. This is a clip that holds the pads on. You'll see that in a bit. Caliper you don't really need, as I'm just gonna use that to show you. So that hex is a 7mm. Very important. Ford's metric. And then I've got this just a cable spool, something. Just need a box or something to set the caliper assembly on, because it's attached with the brake lines. I'll show you. You can use any sturdy box, about 6 inches high or 7 inches high or so. Jack stand, and you need a jack, of course, and you need some way to get your lug nuts off your tire. And you'd like to use our tools a lot quicker. You can use your wrench from the car. This is a 19mm socket, and we're going to start from scratch. So I'm going to jack the car up on the frame past the running board. We're going to leave ourselves enough space between the tire and the jack so we can put our jack stand. So show you really quick under here. You can see this very well. Yeah, I can't really see it very well here. So this is your running board. Back, that's not quite the frame yet. This is quite good right underneath here. Okay, so this ridge, there we go. This ridge here is structure. That's the frame. You can jack on that. And what we're going to do is position the jack so that it is right underneath that. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's get it up. See that? Sorry about the shakiness of this. You can see how it's positioned right on that ridge. I try to center it, but with this kind of jack it doesn't really matter. It's got a pretty big base. So I'll jack it up. Okay, so jack the car. This is a great jack I picked up at Costco for, these are $130. Princess Auto probably has really good deals on jacks as well. You want to get it up high enough that the front tire is completely off the ground and a little bit more, because when you go to put the tire back on, it's much nicer if you have a bit of a gap to play with. I'm going to go up a little bit higher. There we go. I'm also going to sit it down on the jack for safety. So, jack stand, pretty cheap. You can get these at Costco, Canadian Tire. Pretty cheap. You see this ridge, that groove, that's going to fit right in that groove underneath here, runs along here. So this is for safety. Get it right in there. You can see there's a gap. What we're going to do is we're going to release the jack just a hair to bring the car right down on that jack so it doesn't move. Okay, the tire off the ground, we're going to remove those lug nuts. There you go, piece of cake. So I've got the pressure set at around 160 on that compressor. Tire might be a little bit stuck on there. Shimmy it off. Use a little bit of that elbow grease. I'm going to set this aside. And then done with that right now, I'm going to release that jack a little bit so it's on the stand. Ever so slightly. There we go. Okay, so the weight's completely on the stand now. That's not necessarily what I want. So it stands for backup, safety. You want some weight on it so that if the car does decide to move or the jack decides to fail, you don't want the car coming crashing down on the stand. You want a little bit of tension there so that it's just a nice rest, a slow rest. Even if it's a quick rest, at least it doesn't have far to go. So right now this isn't on, but we want this bearing all the weight. So I'm going to jack this up just so that it's a little bit tight and a little bit more than that. So this still doesn't have any play, and neither does this. So sharing the weight. That's safety. And we can work on the assembly free and clear. Now the other thing we want to do for safety is prevent the car from rolling way towards. So if you've got some blocks you could put underneath one of the tires, doesn't really matter, you just don't want to, like if it shifts for some reason, maybe you're working outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the tire I just removed. So that's what I'm going to use with my wedge. So if this shifts forward even a bit, it's going to catch that rubber. It's not going to go anywhere. I do have trailer blocks at a different house. That's what I would really prefer, some rubberized trailer blocks, but this will serve the purpose today. This car's not going anywhere. Okay, now the easy part. Here's your rotor, brake assembly, caliper, and okay, so this is your rotor. two sides to it. This is your brake assembly. You've got, this is your brake line here, so that's full of brake fluid. We're not going to remove that, it's pressurized. So basically how your brakes work is, this is tied to the brake pedal, and this is completely 100% sealed, pressurized brake fluid. When you need to press the pedal, the fluid pressurizes in here, comes down into this assembly, and what it does is, the caliper is like a piston in here, and that pressure pushes the piston, which pushes your brake pads onto the rotor, and that's how you get brakes. So you can kind of see in there. You see pointer. There's your brake shoe there. That's one of them. We're going to remove this clip first, and then really there's only two hex bolts, and then it comes off. This whole assembly comes off here, and those bolts are behind here. There's one in this. This is a rubber cap protecting the bolt, and then you've got another one right there. So if you were to just take a screwdriver, pry off that cap, save the cap for later. So this one here, you know what, let me get some light. Yeah, there we go. We get a better angle here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take this off, the second cap. So those two caps I'm going to set with my lug nuts. So all my bolts are off to the side. Okay, now I'll take our ratchet, and even though you can't see the bolt, it is in there, trust me. And then loosen it. So it's pretty tight. It's several years old. If you're not strong enough, or you're worried about smacking your hand, you can just use a hammer to just tap the wrench to loosen it up. So I'm going to set this down. Now, one thing I noticed doing the other side is these bolts don't come out so easily like you'd think. So I'm going to show you on this side. See if I can get a good angle. There we go. That's much better camera angle. So what I'm going to show you here is this is the bolt. You're going to see come out this way as I move that ratchet. See that? Now I'm going to stop here shortly. It's just going to spin. There you go. It's done. It's actually not coming out anymore out of the socket, but I won't be able to remove the assembly because this bolt is still kind of in the pocket there. So what you gotta do is move the bolt out. Now, many different ways you can do that. What I'm gonna do is just to shimmy, pull this to the side, like just kind of get some pressure on the bolt and just kind of like work it back. You know what I mean? Kind of work it back. You can actually see how it's the head of it here now. You could actually get some lineman pliers in there and just pull it out. If you want, you don't want to pull it out all the way. You just want to get it to. See, I got the camera in one hand and I'm trying to do this. This will be much easier when you do it. just work it back there. So you don't want it out. You just want, like, you don't want the bolt completely out of this socket or housing. Just get it, you know, back enough that it's flush, that it's out of your way. And that's it. Piece of cake, right? Oh, I'm popular. Somebody keeps texting me. Okay, next one is on the other side. Okay, so now we got the other bolt here. I'm going to take off right here. You're going to see it come out there. There we go. That's the money shot. It's almost done. Yeah, it's not coming anymore. So, let's do our little trick. Get that bolt out, work it out, work it out. Use my screwdriver to help it just a little bit. There's a rubber housing there that I don't want to damage. So don't get a tool in there and scrape that gasket. Just want to work it back enough. There we go. You can help it with a screwdriver. Push it back. There. Now, this isn't going to move. This whole assembly isn't going to move yet because I still have that clip on the outside. I'm going to show you this clip here. So this clip, you may want to reuse it if your brake shoes didn't come with a clip. So I showed you earlier. This is came with a new clip, so I don't really care if I damage this one. I'm just gonna pry it off. And I recommend not using this because, you know, it's 5 years old. It's probably got some corrosion, and really the spring is less than a new one in it, so it won't hold the caliper on as well as a brand new clip. So if you're going to reuse it because you didn't get a new one, fine, but definitely recommend chucking it. Always go new if you can. So now this assembly, see it move a bit, so we're just going to shimmy it off. You can use a screwdriver if you want, pry it off. Don't force it, because you do have some hoses back here. Actually, I'm going to get another box here to set this on. That comes off, because I got the cable spools holding my camera right now. So this just comes off. Shimmy it off. Piece of cake, right? So as it comes off, don't worry about any small pieces that are going to be flying off. You need to remember where they go. This is a pretty straightforward assembly. All that's coming off with this is the rear brake shoe here. This is your front brake shoe, so I'm just going to set this down on my stand here. And it's really important because you don't want, let me get you around here. This is your brake line. So there's pressurized fluid in there. Not super pressurized, but there's fluid in there that you don't want any leaks in this cable. In fact, while you have this all off, you should look for any signs of seeping or weeping of brake fluid. It just looks like oil. So you'll see some staining somewhere along this hose. So we don't want a bunch of weight or pressure on this hose. That's why we're going to use a box or something to hold this assembly while it's still attached. Right, it's still attached. We don't want it hanging or dangling. Okay, So this is your brake shoe. Comes off really easy. It's on there kind of loose. This is your rotor. So the rotor should be flat. You can inspect it for pitting or scratches. This is in pretty good shape. There's some flex on there from the shoe, the brake pad. You can kind of see. Let me see if we can get a good look in there. So this pad isn't too bad. Probably still another 10,000 kilometers on it. That groove. And I apologize for people who are already mechanically savvy, but I just want to explain everything for those that maybe aren't. But this is your wear safety line groove. I don't know what you call it, but basically what it's telling you is when this groove is done and you have just flat wear here in the pad, because this is what wears down. This is your pad, and this wears down, and when you get grinding is when you're down to this level. So you have this groove here that's a visual indicator. When you just have the tires off, you can see if there's any of this groove left, just like your tire treads. If the groove is there, then you still have brakes left and you're fine. When it starts to get down and there's no groove and it starts to get flat, then you're down to your last 5%, and that's when the mechanic's going to be telling you you need to change your brakes. Now we're changing them sooner because when this car was in for service for some recalls, they checked the brakes and they said they were down to, it was 2 millimeters on one side of the front, and they were wearing unevenly, so it was 3 millimeters on the other side. This is this side's pretty good, but since when you buy front brakes you can get all the pads, we just change them all at the same time so we don't have uneven wear starting from scratch. So okay, so we're going to remove the rear brake shoe here. Okay, I was getting a little frustrated there. This wasn't high enough, so I put another box here to raise the assembly up to show you better. Not air traffic today, so we're just gonna move this clamp. It's gonna take a while before it catches the back of the caliper head. There we go. So it's caught, so I want to make sure I'm straight head on. So you can see that. Let's see if I can position it that way. There you go. So you can see that pretty good. So turning it. You want to go slow. And the reason is because there's fluid in here, and you don't want to go too hard and too quick, because then that'll just increase pressure, and you've got this off and maybe things aren't all in the same direction they're used to be, so you don't want to add any extra pressure than what's already there. So go nice and slow. I didn't remove the cap on the master cylinder either. I don't think it's necessary, but mechanic will probably tell you to do that. I just don't want to add any air in the line, so moving that piston head back. I'll get my hand out of the way. There we go. Okay, we're almost there. And really, just keep going until it stops. Like, I can't turn it anymore with a little bit of pressure, and that's plenty of space. You can see now it's all the way back in the housing. So it's not going to spring back. And I loosen this off because of how brakes work. So this is hydraulics. When you depress the brake pedal, this caliper piston will push out. So, brings me to a very important point. before you put this vehicle in gear, once we're all said and done, before you, well, no, you have to start it to get the brakes working. So start the vehicle. Before you put it in gear, you have to pump the brakes, because when I put this assembly back on, I'll show you once I get it on. So there's still going to be a pretty big gap between the outside and the inside of the disc, the brake pads on the disc. So if you go to press your brakes when the car is going, it's only going to push it so far, and the pad's not going to catch the disc. So you could get yourself in a lot of trouble if I pull out of this garage and hit the brakes for the first time. I won't have any brakes. I'll have to work it, keep pumping them so that the caliper keeps moving forward until it finally does catch the rotor. So I'll show you what I mean. Let me get this all together. Get your pad, put it in the same way. There's the last one is out. Hand out of the way. So just, work it in there. Don't force it. Also, you don't want to touch the pad. If you've got grime or a pebble on your gloves, or even just grease from your fingers, that's just extra stuff that'll cause you to lose friction between the pad and the rotor. So that's on there. It's nice that Ford has a clip on their brake pad, because you don't have to worry about centering this or anything when you put it back together. So now we get the other shoe, the other pad. I can't call them shoes, they're really pads. So this one can only go on one way, like so. Piece cake. Then you're gonna get your assembly back here and put it right back where you found it. Back on, like so. So I'm going to show you a couple important points here. Okay, so I put it back on. I just want to give you a different camera angle here to show you. See how the pad fits in that groove here? Fits in that groove. Well, there's a similar groove on the other side. It's a little bit trickier to see. And when you put this assembly back on, you really want to get that. You see it there? It catches around that, I don't know, that bulkhead, I guess. Not really a bulkhead, what do you call it? But anyways, that's important. It's got it on both sides. See it in there, see how it's catching? And really, that should happen regardless if you match up your bolts, right? So that's the bolt we took off, and it's lined right up with the housing there on both sides. So when you've reattached this, just keep an eye that when you're screwing it in, that doesn't change right there. That's your brake pad catching on that lip there. That's gonna be tough for me to show you on camera while I'm moving that bolt with my ratchet, because I can't really hold this camera like this. So anyways, here's a good camera angle. Okay. So got my ratchet, get it in here like it was before. Yeah, you can see I'm holding the whole assembly here with my hands, and I'm just going to push that bolt back in. If you remember, we pushed it out to give us some space, so just line it up. There we go. So it's catching. Now I'm not going to tighten it full. I'm just going to get it on there a little bit so I can get the other bolt in. Gives me some play to work with. Okay, so I've got both bolts in. I'm still watching for that, just a little bit out of camera frame there. That's that shoe. I'm making sure it's still caught, gripping the drum. So that one's tight. Well, it's snug anyways. I'll tighten this one up. So there's probably a torque setting on these bolts. I don't know what it is. I do have a torque wrench, but I didn't look it up on Ford's website. I'm sure if you call them, they'll tell you what the torque setting is to torque these bolts down. I'm not too concerned about it. Mechanic will tell you should be torqued. Everything should be torqued to the correct manufacturer settings, because that's what it's designed for, shake and shimming over time to always be tight. So I'm just gonna tighten it a little bit, like reef on it, so that won't go anywhere. And this one too, tighten it, it's not going anywhere. Okay. Now, find your caps, put them back in there. Alright, both caps are in. Now, let me show you if you can see this on the camera. I really want to show this. So, you can see how this moves? That's the front, that's the driver's side brake pad. And it's moving around because there's a gap between the drum and the pad. Now I can't move this one because it's pretty snugly into the caliper piston and it's gripped, it's tight in there. But there's actually a gap. I'm going to show this to you because this is super important. Okay, I'm just giving you a different camera angle here of the gap I want to show you. Okay, so you see that there's a gap between, you can kind of see the ground, there you go. Good picture of the gap between the drum on the left, which is this is the drum, that's your brake pad. There's this gap in between. And that's because the caliper piston here doesn't have the fluid pressurized enough to push the pad snug up against the drum. So right now if you push the brakes, you would move the pad just a little bit, but probably not enough to catch the drum the first time you pushed it. So that means no brakes, right? Your pad hasn't caught the drum is still spinning, you're going to run into something. Now the gap is the same on the other side. See, this is the shoe. Look how much space there is there. And that gap, see that gap? So you've got to, that piston's got to move that much for the pad to catch the drum. Now that's about as much as we push the piston back into the housing, if you remember, with the clamp. So you're going to have to pump your brakes a couple times to make sure the pad is snug up against the drum before you go anywhere. So I will do that once we get everything back together, and then I'll tell you how many pumps it took and what it felt like. It should feel like pretty much nothing, like you normally depress your brakes and it's got some resistance to it, but bet you the first time I pump these brakes, pedal's gonna go pretty easily to the floor. and then it'll progressively get a little bit tighter the more you pump the brakes. And once you pump them enough so they're tight, they'll always be tight, snug up against, because how that works is right now you've pushed that piston head in the caliper back, so that's created less fluid in the line, so it goes back up into the master cylinder reservoir. So really there's just less fluid in the overall line, but once you start pumping the brakes, it's going to put all that fluid back in the line, and it's going to stay there. It's not like a spring. It doesn't leave unless you force it to leave, like we did with the clamp. So we're almost done here. So if you remember, we want to put that clip back on, because right now, yeah, we put their 2 bolts back on, but this still moves because of this clip isn't in. So to put this clip on, not a whole lot to it, mostly just brute force gets it on there. The flex is in each end, so make sure each end is on these sides here, and just push. You're gonna have to clamp it down there a little bit. Push, get it on. There you go. There's some grooves in there that those teeth snug into, and now this isn't moving anymore. See that? Done. So before we put the tire back on, I just want to check again that shoe is on that groove properly, that pad's on that groove properly. Same on the other side there. You can see it's gripped in there pretty good. Same with this one here. That's in there pretty good. Hoses aren't tangled. Didn't damage anything. There's no fluid leaking anywhere. Okay, we're gonna put the tire back on. To do that, I need to jack the car up a little bit. Get it off that jack stand. This should be enough. Oh yeah, we're on there good. Okay, plug nuts. Okay. So when putting lug nuts back on your tire, tighten them out opposite each other. I start here. I'm not going to get it real tight. So I'm going to go opposite a little bit. Opposite. Start here. Okay, so in the vehicle, started up, I'm still in park. I'm gonna pump the brakes. Wow, that went to the floor really easily. So that was 1, 2 full pumps, and right to the floor real easy. 3 times. So I still don't have any brakes. Oh, that one tightened up. That didn't go to the floor all the way. And now we're pretty tight. So we want to keep pumping them until they don't have any difference in play between pumps. So now we're pretty good. So that was probably what, 4 times? Now we're safe to go. Put in drive. And brakes work really nice, really tight. Very nice. That's good. So shouldn't be driving on the video, so I'm just parking in the alley, put it here. Hope you enjoyed the video. It's really easy to do, probably only 15-20 minutes per side if you have the air tools. If you're working with a wrench to take the tires off, then bump that up another 10 minutes per side. But super easy, takes almost no skill if you're doing it in the steps that I gave you. Women, children, man, anybody can change your brakes in your car. Don't believe Ford when they tell you it takes $400 or $300 to change your brakes. Really, the only thing we didn't do that the Ford mechanics would probably do is torque your lug nuts down to the proper setting, or those 2 hex bolts that put the caliper assembly back on. We didn't torque those down, but I'm not too concerned about that. That's not worth an extra few $100s to me. So I want to show you Ford's inspection report here. Why we changed the brakes to begin with. We had it in for some recall and regular maintenance work, and they check the brakes as part of their overall service. And here you can see they've got sorry, let me move this over here. They got 2 millimeters on the right front, 5 millimeters left on the left front, and they've marked it red there. So on their report, they've said, let me show this to you here. They've said, okay, uneven brake wear at front right brake, 2 millimeter left, as per inspection. So front brakes, that's their quote, $649.95 Canadian to replace front brakes. So that's why we did this at home. $650 for Ford to change the brakes. So let me tell you what it really cost, besides time, I guess. First I went to Canadian Tire, figuring they'd be cheaper brakes, and that was a mistake, actually. I went and bought these brake pads, $95.99 OE. They're these ones here, Monroe. And Canadian Tire, I don't think I'll ever go back to them. They look up the vehicle in the system of Ford 2010 Escape XLT, and this is what they gave me. So I asked him if he was sure. He said, "Yep, we're sure. This is the brake pads for that vehicle." Say, "Okay, great." Go home, go to install them, and this is what I get. So you'll notice there's no spring on them. Just to compare the two, this is what we took off the vehicle. Completely different. So thank you, Canadian Tire, for wasting my time. And I bet you $100 that I'm going to have an argument with them returning these for full refund, because the plastic, I had to take them out of the shrink wrap plastic to actually just compare them to what was on the vehicle. So they don't like that, and I think they might have some trouble accepting them as a return, even though they're brand new. So we'll worry about that later. I paid by Visa, so Visa will let me return it regardless of what Canadian Tire says. But then I took it to my pad to Ford. And of course, I was right in the middle of doing the one side, so had the car up on jack stands and realized I had the wrong brake pad. So I called Ford. They got them in stock. Okay, go down there. And like I said before, they gave me the shoes that had a different size bracket. It was actually quite a bit smaller. Everything else is the same, but it's quite a bit smaller. So careful about that. You want, for the Ford Escape 2010 model, you definitely want this model number, this part number. These are the ones here. You had to go back and into the back and change them up. So the other thing I wanted to show you. Oh, by the way, here's the price for the Ford. We don't want to get anybody in trouble, so I'll just hide their contact info for the dealership. $97.28, and there's your part number there, the BR 1047-B. So plus tax, $102. About half an hour of my time to do both sides, minus doing the video. So I saved $650 plus tax. $680 minus the $100 for the pads I paid, so I saved around $580 doing it myself. And it's not challenging at all. Anyone can do this at home if you have some basic tools. And what I wanted to show you was this report here. It said 2 millimeters left on the right front pad. So I'm going to show you the right front pad. What we took off. I'm going to flip these upside down so you can see. That's the left front. This on the camera here. Okay, that's the left front. And here's the right front. So what Ford said is there was 2 millimeters from there to there, or maybe they were saying from the bottom of the gap, the warning gap, to the edge. So you got 2 millimeters there, and then on this side they said 5 millimeters. So I'm assuming it's going to be this one that they were measuring, but we're going to check it. I got a caliper here, and we're going to check it. So I got a nice digital caliper. These things work great, and it's got a depth gauge at the back. So we're just going to stick it out a little bit. So we're at, where are we at there? Almost 10 mils. So we'll take it. I'm going to take the 2 mil one first, and just see how far down it goes. I'm going to measure the actual gap there. Alright, so what does that come to? 2.36 millimeters. So not bad, they're pretty accurate. 2.36. That what they're not telling you though is you still got another millimeter or so there of pad left above that gap, right? So let's measure that. Actually, let's see what's really left in this pad. See what I'm doing there? That's what's left of the pad. And measurement is 3.57 millimeters. So that's quite a bit, actually, of pad. We didn't need to change those pads today, despite what Ford was saying, that we needed to change them. That was 327, so on the other side, let's see, we're measuring this one. That's do this one. On the other side, we've got in the groove. We've got 3.99, and then if we were to do the entire pad left over, so here we've got 5.8 millimeters of pad left here. And I'm just gonna, just for curiosity, I'm gonna do the other side of that pad, because they said that it was 5 millimeters left, and I assumed they were doing the groove, but there was only 4. And yeah, that makes a little more sense. So they were giving me the measurement of that, 4.675 mils, and that's of the depth of this gap here. But really, you've got 5.53 mils on this pad. So that was the left front, where they said there was only 5 mils left. So they're pretty close on that. Not bad. But what's 5 mils? Let's think about that. There's 5 mils left. Doesn't seem like a lot, right? Why don't we compare it to the brand new pads that we're going to be returning to Canadian Tire? How deep are they when you get a brand new one? So a brand new pad gives you 7.84 millimeters. So think about that. I had 2.3 millimeters left on this pad. That's a little less than half of a brand new pad, right? 2 times 2.36 is 4.72, almost 5 mils. So maybe a third. About a third left on this, and they were saying, "Oh, time to change them. 2 mils, not very good. We're going to quote you $650." So I'm not going to say they're trying to scam you. They're just doing their job. They probably have their thresholds, you know, that they have their recommendations. But be wise, you know what you're paying for. And when you see 2 mils. Ask them, is that 2 mils left of the gap? Where are they measuring? Just the gap? Or 2 mils from the pad to the end of the pad? Sorry. The pad here to the end of the pad here. Because this is all available braking, right? This wears down, and you don't want to wear it right down to the end, right? But you still got, once you pass the warning gap, you still got a good millimeter, maybe even 1.3 millimeters there of pad left. So translate that into how many kilometers is that? Well, this car has how many? 45. Check. Brought it in for service, and the odometer read 40,000 kilometers. So 40,000 kilometers we wore down from almost 8 mils down to 5 mils, and from 8 mils down to 2.3 mils on one side. So that was about 5 millimeters. So if we've got another 2.3 millimeters left on the one side, well, that's another 25,000 kilometers we could have got on those pads. We wouldn't have had to change them. So if you've got 1 millimeter, a little bit more than 1 millimeter here, you still got about almost 10,000, probably around 8,000 kilometers left to go. So it's not like the old days, right? Like 20 years ago and before, pads would have to be changed every 20, 30,000 kilometers, but now they're using different materials. They last a lot longer. They don't wear down as easily. You know, they should last you 70 to 90,000 kilometers unless you're really riding them hard all the time, and you know, towing trailers and stuff. So if somebody's telling you that you should change your brakes and your vehicle's only 40,000 kilometers, then I mean, that's why I went and did this myself. I'm not going to pay $650 for something that didn't need to be done, or I wanted to see for myself what was going on. Now, the thing that they did point out was worthwhile is there's uneven brake wear. You know, almost twice as much brake wear on the right front side as the left front. Now that, I don't know why that's happening. I'll do some investigation on that, but I didn't need them to tell me that either. Once you've got the tires off, like if you're doing your annual rotation, winter tires to summer tires, check your brake pads. You can see, once the tire's off, you can see this gap, if there is a gap. So you can measure yourself, just eyeballing it, how much wear is left to go. So if you've got a gap here, if you always know that this is 1 millimeter from the bottom of the gap to the end of the pad, you know, that's about 8,000 kilometers, depending on your driving use. So if that distance is double, so you got maybe this much gap, you got about 16, 20,000 kilometers left, and so forth. Just use that as a guide as to how much brakes you've got left. You don't need a mechanic to tell you when to change the brakes. Once you're done with that gap, you should think about it for sure, changing your brakes. But it's not immediate, right? It's going to start to squeal past that. Once you get to here, you don't want to get to here because this will start to scrape up your rotors, and then you got to change out your rotors or machine them. So 60, 70,000 kilometers is a good time to check. And that's all I've got.